Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we're going to be going over and showing you how to install the Roadmaster Fuse Master bypass here on a 2019 Buick Envision. So a fuse bypass is going to be installed in individual circuits there in the fuse box of our vehicle, and it's going to cut power to those circuits at the flick of a switch. And the reason we need this when we're flat towing our vehicle, because according to the owner's manual, we have to disconnect 2 fuses while the vehicle's in tow. That's going to be fuse number 29 and fuse number 32. Now, those 2 fuses control the body control module, and those activate the lights, the locks, all the electronics in your vehicle. And the reason we need to disconnect those while we're towing our vehicle is that those are going to draw power from the battery and could potentially lead to a dead battery when we arrive at our location and get ready to start our vehicle and take off. That's certainly not something we want. Now, I will say this actual kit here isn't a requirement. You can actually just open the glove box here where our fuse box is located and manually pull out those fuses and reinsert them each time. But let's face it, that's a chore. We don't have to worry about losing those fuses, and it's just an extra step before we can hit the road, not something we want to do. If we can do all that at the flick of a switch, that's definitely going to be something we're going to be interested in. So let's go ahead and show you that now. So the circuits that we need to cut power to are in the instrument panel fuse box, and that's going to be on the passenger side in your glove compartment. So open the glove box here, and in this area here, you're going to have a cover here. It's got a lightning bolt. That's going to signify that this is a fuse panel. So we'll pull that off, and there we can see our fuses. If we look over to the right here, you can see a couple wires. Those are actually to our Fuse Master. So you can see here we have a wire to each of the prongs here for each fuse. There's our 32, there's our 29, and then we have the wires tucked down there, ran to our switch. So here's our switch. This is the only thing we need to pay attention to when we get into our vehicle when we're ready to either tow or take off down the road. As you can see here, the positions are conveniently labeled. We have the white dot up in the drive mode, so this is when we're just driving our vehicle around town. And then we have our tow mode here that we simply just press that, and that's going to be when we're towing our vehicle behind our motorhome. So in regards to installation, this one is very simple. It's definitely something you guys can do at home by yourselves. We only have to drill 1 hole into the vehicle. The rest of it is going to be completely plug and play. So let's go ahead and walk you through how to do that now. So to start our installation today, we need to locate the instrument panel fuse block, which for this vehicle here is going to be inside the glove compartment on the passenger side. So we're going to simply open up our glove box here, and then down in here we're going to have a cover here that's going to reveal the fuses once we remove it, just like that. Now, if you actually look on the back of the fuse box lid, there's going to be a fuse diagram, which we may need to turn it to hold it correctly to match up with the fuse orientation. But then we're just going to simply find the 29 and 32 fuse slot, which are going to be on this side here, just a couple up and then a couple up more there. We need to remove the 10 amp fuses. If you have a pair of needle nose pliers, there should be a fuse holder somewhere in the vehicle's main fuse box under the hood, a fuse holder remover, but if not, needle nose works great just to get those 2 micro fuses out. Now, once we have those out, we're actually going to be taking our harness here, our bypass harness, and there's going to be a nice little space underneath the dash here. You can sort of see my fingers through there now. So you're going to remove the switch from the harness, and then you're going to feed the wires up and through that little passage out the bottom, and they can actually slide behind this panel here in between the fuse box. So you're going to be routing the side up here with the pins that go to the fuse terminals. So the instructions tell you to not insert the fuses to the end, but the way that we have our harness routed, the fuses are going to be in there by the time we get the switch mounted and we get our pins in the terminals. Therefore, we're not going to have access to do that. So you can go ahead and insert your fuses now. You just need to be careful that the terminals on the 2 wires aren't touching. But now that we have the 4 wires here that go from the harness, they're going to be plugging into the fuse box. We have 2 black and then 2 red. Normally, you'd want to be careful about which fuses and wires you're attaching to which circuits there, because you would need to then insert the corresponding fuse into that wire that matches up with that. But in this case, they're both 10 amps, so you really don't have to worry about that. Just make sure you have 2 black pins going to one of the fuses and then 2 red pins going to the other. And again, the terminals we need are 29 and 32. So if we use that same set of needle noses we used to remove the fuses, you can easily pin those into the terminals. It makes it a lot easier, but it's really not that hard. For this particular application, we use the 2 black wires, the 2 black pins going to the top, number 32 fuse, and then the 2 red ones going to the bottom, which is the 29. So now we're going to actually install the switch here. So this is the button we press when we want to drive, or when we're ready to tow our vehicle. It's going to cut power to the fuses. So for starters, you're going to take a 7mm socket. There's going to be 1 screw right up here. You'll simply remove that, and that's going to give you a little bit more room to work because you can kind of bend this panel down. But we're not going to be removing it completely, nor are we going to be removing any other screws. Once we have this panel down, we're going to take a 3/4 inch drill bit. Chances are you're not going to have a single 3/4 inch drill bit, so step drill bits work really good for this. We're just going to drill a hole in this panel here. So once we get that hole drilled, we're going to take our wiring harness, which we can actually see it here. It should be hanging down in this area anyway, so it shouldn't be too hard to locate. So on the back of your switch here, you're going to get a little, a jam nut. So a jam nut with some teeth on it that's actually going to help secure the switch to this panel. So you're going to stick that jam nut over your wires, and then you're going to feed your wires out through this hole in this panel here. And then we can attach them to the back of the switch. Now again, I said earlier we needed to be careful if we are using different amp fuses because the pins and those locations of the wires need to correspond to the fuses. But this is just 2 10 amp fuses, so it's not going to be a big deal. Just make sure you match the color side to side. In other words, I want 2 black pins on this side and 2 red pins on this side. They do come pre-attached, but we have to remove them in order to install the switch. And again, needle nose pliers are going to be your friend when you're working with those terminals. But now we're just going to pretty much pull the wires through that hole there we made, and then we're just going to use the needle nose to press them onto the back of the switch. I'm going to press the switch into the panel there through the hole we drilled, and I'm going to reach back there when pulling the panel down, and I'm going to use that jam nut to secure the switch to our panel. And now all that's left to do is to pretty much re-secure the panel here with that screw and install our stickers, and then we can test this system out. So this is a pretty easy system to test. Right now we're in drive, so everything's going to have power. But if we go to tow mode, turn that off, we should see the lights kick off. So that's one indication. Another indication is go ahead and try to use your door locks on the door. They shouldn't work at all. Shouldn't have power to any of that stuff. But if we go ahead and hit drive again, it takes a little while for the system to boot up, but you should see your lights come back on and you should have power to the door locks once again. Yep, I can hear the door locks actuating, so I know everything was hooked up and it's working correctly. And that's going to do it today for our look at installation of the Roadmaster Fuse Master bypass here on our 2019 Buick Envision.